Great. Well, thank you guys for being here. Just want to start out and ask you a little bit about the journey of Novomoto. What was kind of the idea and thought genesis of it? And if you can just share with us kind of your journey as entrepreneurs through your venture.
Yeah, so I think maybe the best thing we can do to start with is give a little bit of an overview of what Novomoto is. So I'd be happy to jump in and start that. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, so Merdad and I are the co-founders of Novomoto, and we are a for-profit social enterprise. So what we do is we bring solar power into off-grid communities in sub-Saharan Africa. In particular, we started this in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where I was born. In DRC today, the country has access to about 1.3 gigawatts of electricity for a population at the time was about 80 million when we created this, but actually estimates now show that it might be somewhere in the range of 85 to 90 million at this point. And when you compare that to Madison, Wisconsin, an area with about the same amount of electricity, which has a population of 0.7 million, and you see that there's a huge difference in what we have here in the States versus what's available in DRC. And what this amounts to is that over 90% of the population lacks access to reliable electricity, forcing over 73 million people to spend over $17 a month on what we refer to as stopgap means of energy. So candles, kerosene, disposable battery flashlights, to gain access to lighting in their home, which is oftentimes less than 10% as bright as what a US home has. And on top of that, people are forced to go charge their phones at kiosks for hours. This means that people are outside of connectivity, can't reach their family or friends or colleagues for hours at a time as they have their phones charged. So what we do as a company is we offer pay-as-you-go solar power packages to immediately provide a solution to this problem. We offer them in entry-level systems for lighting and phone charging, as well as larger systems that include televisions for a media experience inside of people's homes. When a customer switches over to becoming a Novomoto customer, they immediately save money. So our lighting kit over the course of 5 years saves an average Congolese family about $850, while dramatically increasing the type of light that they have in their home, and also allowing them the flexibility to charge their phones and stay connected at all times. Customers who opt for and are eligible for our TV kits also save a tremendous amount of money and gain the ability of having valuable time together watching the news or movies or whatever they'd like on their TVs, as well as getting the lighting experience, which is similar to the US, and again, the ability of being able to charge their phones at their convenience. So all of this is made possible by what we refer to as a pay-as-you-go model. This is a rent-to-own model that we implement with the use of mobile money. So customers pay a small upfront fee, and after that, they can then pay in increments as small as daily amounts for as long as about 18 months until they then own those solar power kits. We use a platform called M-Pesa, which is the largest mobile money platform in Congo. The platform allows our customers to deposit cash in local currency or in US dollars at independent agents throughout the country. Then they have the ability of transferring the money to us and automatically having their kits activated after they do so. Or they can receive a text message and enter in their code directly into their battery packs. So I will stop here, and Merdad, if you would, could you please continue sharing what we do?
Hey, awesome. Let me actually share my screen here. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so basically I want to start with the market opportunity. So in sub-Saharan Africa, there are more than 120 million homes right now that do not have access to reliable electricity, and they are spending about $24 billion in alternative approaches just to get access to lighting and phone charging. So that's a larger basically market for us, but more specifically, Congo alone, the market size is about $2.6 billion annually. And western part of Congo, that's where we started our operations, the opportunity size is about $600 million per year. So we have basically started our operations in the province of Kinshasa. So Kinshasa is the capital city of the Congo, and we have been able to serve customers in more than 10 communities around the capital city. Now we are actually providing services not only to communities in suburbs of the city, but also we are providing service inside the city. And we are hoping that within the 2021, we can expand to 2 neighboring provinces, Congo Central and Kikwit, and Kwilu, basically Kikwit being the largest city there. And hopefully we can expand to other provinces soon after that. So here is a big picture rollout map of Novomoto's process and operations. So we started with just 20 installations in 2017. We did multiple pilot phases in 2017 and 18. And 19, we basically started to roll out to actual customers. And by the end of 2020, we had more than 700 installations done. And our goal is the end of 2021, we can do up to 3,000 installations. So the goal of Novomoto as a company is actually to do 1 million installations by the end of 2026. And basically a number of large corporations and energy companies, international energy companies, have shown interest to the type of work that we do in off-grid areas. Here are some examples of the companies like Total and Shell and NG that have either made strategic investments in companies like us, or in some cases they have acquired companies like us. So here is our impact to date. So we've provided electricity to more than 3,000 people. We have provided them in more than $125,000 in 5 years savings. And then we have reduced the carbon dioxide emission by 79 tons with the group of customers that we have to date. Here are a little bit about our financials. I don't plan to get into the details here, but basically we are expanding. We are anticipating a growth in sales, and hopefully from 2023, we actually are going to have a positive EBIT margin. And moving forward, we will have that for the company. So it's a little bit about our fundraising. So we are very happy that Doyen Foundation was one of our investors to date. We have raised more than $1.2 million. And we are actually in the middle of our seed round. Our round is 1.3 million. And to date, we've raised $730,000 off of that. So here is the team, Aaron and myself, the co-founders, and then we have a management team in Congo that have basically been able to run the show there and show all these new progress and partnerships that we are working on. And then we have a great group of advisors that have been really helping us. So, well, thank you very much. I think this is a brief overview of what we do. And obviously, we are happy to take any questions as you would like to.
Thanks for sharing all that. One question I have, my background is actually in kind of social impact, social entrepreneurship work. As a personal question, is the social impact kind of metric component that you guys use that CO2 removal, or is it the number of families with electricity? What's the kind of social impact driver that you guys kind of use most frequently?
Actually, so it depends on the audience. So on our website, we actually are using the same metrics that are shared here. There are some groups that are more interested in, for example, the impact of our work in education. So we have a collective number of hours that our system are enabling families and children to be able to study at home. So that's one other metric that we can share. And then we have some other people that actually in most recent update that we sent out, some people were asking of the impact of having a system on average for a family. So we basically do the calculation. It's about 4% of the GDP per capita of the country that people are saving every year when they're using our system. So we have a few other metrics. These are the more common ones, I would say. But depending on the audience, we definitely have other metrics that we would share. And also on top of that, one thing that I think Aaron can explain better is about our impact projects for clinics. So we are electrifying a number of clinics in the province of Kinshasa at this point. And then we are sharing those numbers with our investors and with the audience as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I immediately thought of when you were focusing on the phone power, I was thinking of, how much the phone is an income generator for many parts of rural communities in Africa. And if there was any economic metrics that you were seeing downstream of, increasing the power around income generation, actually. So that's fascinating. I wanted to kind of pivot into, our conversation today around equity fundraising and learn a little bit about at what point in kind of your journey did you start your fundraising process or thinking about your fundraising and as a strategy, and when did equity crowdfunding really become part of that conversation?
Great question. So it came up out of necessity, which maybe is the case for everyone as they're looking for fundraising. But we were in a position where we had some systems going, but we weren't in a position where we could really expand on what we were doing. And we needed to raise capital for that reason. As a startup, obviously, it's difficult to get working capital when you don't have a track record of having a substantial amount of monthly recurring revenue. So in 2019, crowdfunding really got onto our radar, and it actually was initially from a connection that we had through Kiva, as Kiva started a loan program for US-based companies at that time. And we recognized that the amount of capital that we needed to raise was sort of outside of the range of what Kiva was offering. So they recommended that we take a look at WeFunder, which is a crowdfunding platform that they had some connections with in the past. And, we did some research on WeFunder along with a few other equity crowdfunding platforms like Seed Invest, Republic, and now there are many more even beyond that with, sort of niches that each of these groups have sort of tried to cultivate. So in late 2019, it really got on our radar and we started to evaluate what was possible and what the ranges of fundraising was with these particular platforms. And at that time, I don't know if it's still the case now, but WeFunder was the #2 ranked equity crowdfunding platform. I believe on average, at that time, companies were raising somewhere between $350,000 to $400,000 on average, successful campaigns, that is, on WeFunder. And I think Seed Invest was a bit higher, maybe along the range of 500,000 or so. And that was very close to being a substantial piece of what we were trying to raise for our seed round and are still trying to raise for our seed round. So yeah, that's sort of a background on why we chose it. We needed the money, and it was a way of getting our message out to a lot of people in a way that would have been a lot harder for us to do with just our internal connections and cold emails and cold calls to family offices and angel investors.
And when you got into that process, how much of a learning curve did you have to not just, maybe equity crowdfunding and specifically, but the whole fundraising process? I mean, was it, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes at that point and understand, as you looked at that, it was out of necessity in terms of finding a tool to fund, but was it overwhelming to kind of take all of the bits and pieces in, because it is a little bit of a nuanced process, right?
Absolutely. So it was sort of an unknown or uncharted territory for us. We tried to do some research, learn from people that have done it in the past. We had some calls with people, use their experience. The folks that we funded were very helpful. Actually, they spent a number of meetings with us to go through the process and walk us through the most important items that we need to have for a successful campaign. So I really appreciate their taking the time and walking us through this process. And actually, the last part was just basically having a plan between the two of us. And we spent some time, we were actually at that time in Congo. So we had the chance to actually ask someone to join us from San Francisco to shoot a video for us. And that was a great experience working with him. And that actually the video, we just doing the editing. So the whole process was a little bit stressful at the time, because we were launching a campaign in a few days and working on editing the video and everything else. But at the end of the day, I would say when we want to do it next time, which is actually soon, sometime in this quarter, we are planning to do another campaign again. We have some of that experience, so we are planning to be more prepared. And there are some requirements though. So on a different category, there are some requirements by SEC that companies need to have. There is a form called Form C that needs to be filled out. And then there are some financial requirements by the SEC. So for example, each company needs to have a review, at least a review or a full audit, depending on the type of fundraising they want to do. So we were not aware of those things before. And now that we are actually much more prepared for a campaign moving forward. So I would say a combination of internal planning, having a good video to share on the campaign, and also having the requirements by SEC ready would be the 3 steps that any company probably needs to have in place before they launch their campaign.
Yeah, that's great. That's actually right where I was going to go, was to just ask if you guys could talk a little bit about the actual process. So maybe, you shared some of those steps, but take me through a little bit of, once you decided to use the tool, then what happened? What were kind of the steps that you took?
Sure, I can touch on one aspect of it. So with respect to sharing our story in a way that is sort of attention grabbing to potential investors, what we had to do is not only follow the template that WeFunder has in terms of sort of the basic items that need to be provided, but we needed to try to tell a story as to why our solution was so impactful, for one, and also lended our company as a good investment opportunity for individuals looking to put as little as $100 to $500 in, or even accredited investors who'd be looking to put substantially more in. So we tried to craft it in the lens of the customer experience and just how revolutionary or how much of a difference somebody would have in their lives from transitioning from, say, kerosene or candles to a solar kit in their home. So we focused our video around the story, primarily around the story of a woman who was one of our customers in the Maluku village just outside of Kinshasa. So we went on site, spent I don't know how many hours at her place, playing with some of her kids and nieces and nephews, and learning about what she does. And we took some video of her making this home brewed alcoholic beverage that she sells in the community called the Bitoko, and just sort of immersed ourselves in the customer experience for the sake of the video. and spent a lot of time making sure that the video would sort of capture people at a first glance. And then we spent a lot of time editing it, right? So, you know, we took a bunch of footage, but, you know, oftentimes you'll start out with the video that's maybe 5-6 minutes, but, you know, the recommended time is on the order of 2 to 4 minutes. So, you know, we had to do some editing and some whittling down to really get the core of our story out there in the most effective way that we could. And then outside of that, a big piece of that outside of just the video aspect is making sure that you're promoting the campaign as well. So from a promotional standpoint, we made sure that everybody in our network that we already knew about it well in advance of the launch. So they would be prepared to, on day one, potentially put an investment in. So I guess that sort of transitions into the next point I wanted to make with respect to that. So outside of getting the message out to your own network of family, friends, and supporters, it was also important for us to get a group of anchor investors involved. So these are people that we had already talked to about being potential investors, but we convinced them to make the first initial investments on the campaign to show that our campaign wasn't really starting from zero. And that, I think, had a huge effect. I think everybody else who saw it automatically gave it more credibility for the standpoint that there was already a couple $100,000 in our platform in the early days of the campaign. We did a lot more in terms of social media once the campaign was live, and Mehrdad did a great job sort of using Facebook as a tool for that. So I think maybe that's a good segue to talk about some of the cool things that were done on that front.
Yeah, so basically we had the chance to work with one intern that he was actually helping us to share the message. So we had some schedule on a daily basis. We would send out messages on all the social media platforms that we have to promote the campaign, and sometimes just sharing a short story about our customers, sometimes just sending a quote from a customer. So that social network push was something that we did constantly, and also a Facebook campaign. So we did not have any experience on using Facebook as a marketing tool. This was actually some trial and error on our side. So we tried to see how we can use it. We had some success. Actually, we had, I think, more than 10x return on investment that we put in Facebook in terms of investment that we received on our campaign. So that was a success. And also the other part of it was just keeping the investors in the campaign updated. So WeFunder allows us to share messages to the investors who just invested. And in a few cases, we actually had an investor who put down, for example, $500 that, you know, after receiving an update a few weeks later, they said, oh, I want to add another 500. I want to add another 1,000 or so. So basically sharing the news in all the possible directions that we could, I would say definitely helped us to share our campaign with many people.
Yeah, that's a lot of work, a lot of media and promotions work for entrepreneurs to take on. I immediately started thinking about accounting headaches. And I wonder if you guys can speak to what was the once you know the campaign is over and you know now you've got all these supporters from an accounting and a fundraising perspective. What does your cap table look like? I mean, how does this kind of fit in, you know, and how many headaches does it cause you or your accountants, you know, with all of these different investors?
That's a great question. We still do not know the full answer to this question. The reason is that, so at the beginning, we were under the impression that all the investment coming in from a campaign, for example, WeFunder, would be under their name in our cap table. And the reality is that that bill has been in the Congress for a few years now. That's a special vehicle purpose deal that has never passed yet. So at this point, we have, so from the accounting perspective, our accountant was okay to have, as a time being, to have WeFunder in our books, and the review process was also fine with that. But I suspect that if you want to do a full audit, probably those need to be, go back, and cap table would be adjusted based on every single person who invested if this SVP bill doesn't pass by then. So I would say a little bit of learning curve in terms of accounting and how to add that to our normal books. And obviously the accounting firm that we're working with needed to review some of these contracts. So some work has been done in that area, but I would say it hasn't been a big problem for us yet. Hopefully it never will be.
I think another point that we should bring up with respect to that is the fact that we took in capital using convertible notes. And that plays a big role as to how people would show up on our cap table and when. So because we decided to issue the opportunity or offer of convertible notes, at the moment, all of the investors that came in through our WeFunder campaign actually show up as people who have lent us money. But the terms of that note would then make them official investors with a qualifying investment down the road, which for us is targeted for our Series A investment round, which we'll be looking to activate next year, early next year, or potentially late this year, depending on how the next quarter or so goes. So, we were sort of pushing that ball down the road a bit at this point. As Mehrdad mentioned, there are still some question marks in this whole process as to what this will look like after all the dust is settled.
And kind of coming back to the strategy of all this, how did you decide to offer at a convertible note? I mean, what was the decision process? Or was that just basically the easiest way for it to happen without having all of the answers at first? Or was there advice given? Or how did you guys land on that offering?
So I would say to the most part, it was the result of some research and discussions that we internally had, that convertible notes are probably the best investment vehicle for early stage startups that do not have a valuation. So typically, the lead investor in a Series A would need to have some information from the financial track record of a company to be able to propose the terms. And then after that, the other investors would follow, though that would be difficult at earlier stage because they don't have the data they needed to. So I would say convertible note was probably the best option for us, and maybe a lot of early stage startups, if they don't have the valuation, or if someone is not willing to set the terms for them. If they do, that's a great start. That's a different approach. But at the time, we also had some investment before the campaign. I mean, at the time, so we had a number of angel investors and institutions, Doyen Foundation included, that they had a convertible note with us as well. So we actually took advantage of the same structure and proposed a note to the investors on WeFunder based on the notes that we had with other groups.
Yeah, that's helpful. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of on the other side of that question is, have you run into any impact as you've kind of come on this other side and talking with investors now about the impact of using equity crowdfunding? I mean, basically, what's the reaction been from other potential investors that's been in your fundraising strategy? Or maybe there hasn't been.
I'd say it's a bit varied. I think, at least in our experience, some of the accredited investors that are amongst our investors were a little bit hesitant. That's speaking of those who weren't the anchor investors. Obviously, they decided to be a part of it, but there were some people who were accredited who didn't quite want to get involved in this new form of equity investing. You know, it's different. Not a lot of people know a lot about it. It seems like there might be a lot of unknown unknowns at this point, and they're not completely wrong. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But from the standpoint of most of the people who invested through our crowdfunding campaign, they were more engaged, I think, than the average investor would be, because they felt some type of ownership toward it and wanted to share it through their own Facebook channels, and I think it gave us sort of a different set of investors that we wouldn't have otherwise had access to. And because of the way that WeFunder sort of markets it and the way that we marketed it, I think it also expanded on our social media channels quite a bit as well, in terms of just how we were getting our message out in general to the public. There were a few headaches along the way, some intricacies of how the process works that we had to sort of be in touch with investors that was something we weren't anticipating. For example, like handling checks was an issue. Typically when you send in a check directly to a company for an investment, it's in our account in like a day, and then we can confirm the money's been received and sign off on contracts and everything. But with this, in particular with WeFunder, sometimes it would take them weeks to even acknowledge the check had been received, and then along the way, the investor might get messages saying your money hasn't shown up yet. Please send in your money, otherwise your investment will be canceled, right? So you can imagine having to deal with those conversations with multiple investors all at the same time. So there were some kinks along the way, but generally speaking, it's something that I think was a huge positive for us as a company, and it's something that we're looking to do again. Actually, we think it can be another piece of sort of wrapping up our seed round here later this year.
I'd love to hear you both talk a little bit about, you mentioned this, Aaron, but the community, component of that. So you're talking about, it brought in all these people that may or may not have ever interacted with your company, your brand, your social media, but what other benefits were there, or what else did you see in terms of the folks that did invest with you through that platform? What was the impact of that, or what kind of people were they, or like, what did was there some kind of special sauce like formed because of these kind of non-traditional investors, maybe is the way to say it?
So the thing that comes to my mind at this point is that this sort of fundraising actually, it was actually a fun experience to receive the email. So we were going along a day, and every half an hour, every hour, we would receive a message that this person invested $500 in your company or $1,000. And at the end of the day, some days we had like 20 messages, 25 messages that these people invested. So that was just giving some positive vibe to everyone in the company. So that's one positive thing I would say in terms of the community inside the company. Also, it had a similar impact to mainly to our anchor investors. Some of them were sort of thinking about, okay, I would probably want to do, X dollars, and then, if I see it's going to work out, then I'm going to add a little bit more to that. But when they see this campaign after a few weeks, they were confident, and even they increased the amount of investment that they had. And some of them actually brought other anchor investors to the campaign. So this feeling of like a community feeling, it added to the confidence of everyone, including the anchor investors, to actually bring more than what they had in mind to start with. So I'm just, those are the 2 points that came to my mind about your question.
That's awesome. Okay, so that's like the rose-colored picture, right? Like all of these people came flocking and giving you money. You're getting all these emails about people giving you money. You guys both talked about some of the hiccups and challenges, but like, what would your case be what case would you make for someone to not do it?
Well, one of the things that WeFunder told us when we were evaluating working with them to form a campaign in the first place was that if you're not far enough along in terms of monthly recurring revenue or whatever traction metrics that you would find relevant for a particular company, then the campaign can be a failure. And that mark of having a failed campaign can have other unintended impacts. So we went into it with a number of different scenarios that we had sort of evaluated. And early on, we were aware that this could sort of turn on us and kind of be a failed attempt that would potentially have other consequences. There are also some other sort of things to take into consideration with equity crowdfunding platforms. So they do make money off your investments, right? I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. So some investors would comment that, oh, well, if I would have just written you, or if I would have just given you a check, I wouldn't have had to pay this processing fee to WeFund, right? And I think for us, correct me if I'm wrong, Amrita, but I believe it was 6%, and then we ended up getting a discount because we're a social impact company. But I think the average company is around 10% of the raise that goes back to WeFunder, and that's not including the transactional fees, right? So they also charge you, I think, 3%, depending on the method that you use to send the money through the campaign. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think if somebody's evaluating whether this is right for them, they should consider whether they can get this money in a different way, and whether this is really right for them from that standpoint. I think maybe not all companies are suited for particular types of crowdfunding platforms as well. I think, there could be some instances where a particular type of company may not do as well on a crowdfunding platform. And I think that, takes into account that people should really do their research on the platform before they go into it. So what we did is we took a look at a number of what we considered similar campaigns that were already active on WeFunder and other crowdfunding platforms to get a sense of whether we had a good chance of really gaining some traction and attention on their platforms. So there are a lot of things to consider when trying to develop a campaign.
When you were doing that that research of should we or shouldn't we on WeFunder, have we seen similar companies or companies that have some sort of similarity, either product based? What did you find were the types of companies that were hitting their goals, or you were seeing mass fall off within the campaigns? Was there a difference between physical product or certain business sector versus other ones?
It's kind of funny. Go ahead, Renat.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to comment. It was kind of funny. There's a huge range of different companies, but one of the types of companies that was actually getting a lot of traction was marijuana-based companies. So, with the way CBD is going right now, I guess that makes a lot of sense, and that was getting a lot of traction. There were some more sort of hard R&D companies that were getting some traction. There was a fusion company that was up on WeFunder that had raised a substantial amount of money. And there were a lot of companies sort of in the retail space as well that were raising considerable amounts of money. One of the concerns we had is that our MRR at the time when we started the campaign was relatively low compared to a number of other companies on the platform. And we thought that might be a barrier for us. It didn't end up being a barrier for us, but that was something that definitely worried us because we were definitely lower on the spectrum from that standpoint, considering some of the other companies that were already having several millions of dollars in annual revenue.
I will add two examples to what Aaron shared with regards to successful companies. Well, actually three. So there was a category of companies that they actually had a good track record, and they were some of them actually had been on WeFunder multiple times in the past. So those companies typically, when they opened a round, it would be a few days till they raise 1 million or so to hit the cap, and then they would close. So that was one example of a successful company based on their track record. There was another category of companies that I was surprised, well, positively surprised to see that the kind of impact they had. So in terms of, there was one company that they launched their campaign, I think a day or a few days after they were on Shark Tank. And that company, basically, they raised, I think, something close to $1 million in a few days as well. So they leveraged that presence. And then there was another instance that a company had an endorsement from Michelle Obama. And then they immediately, I think they closed their 1 million in 2 days or so. So some sort of success or endorsement, based on my experience, it made a big difference in the companies to how fast they can raise the money. Yeah, so those are a few things that came to my mind about some of the successful companies. So we had a table, we had like 10 most successful companies on WeFunder, and then we were basically tracking them week to week, see how they move forward, and then what are some of the things that would change the game for them from week 1 to 2. They had a big jump, what did they do? And then we were trying to see if we can learn from that experience and then implement that in our own campaign.
That's a lot of learning. I mean, that's a lot of good research. Did you guys feel like it hindered you at all, since your user market is overseas? And this is kind of a broader question, but did you see any impact on how people engaged with your company, either in this way or through fundraising, or just in general, since your market is outside of maybe where the funding is? That was a very convoluted question. Basically, are you seeing any, I started to think, when people are investing, this is their way to be a part of your company, right? Because your consumer is not them necessarily. So did you see like any kind of positive responses about that being, I'm going to scrap this question because I think I'm just curious about kind of the ways that you're engaging with people in the States versus your product being, in Congo, but I don't know that it would have a real material impact on the fundraising side.
So, well, I mean, a little bit. There was some interest from potential investors who are based in Congo.
Right.
But for the most part, it actually was fairly decoupled. We didn't see much of a change in terms of brand awareness in Congo due to the campaign.
Yeah.
So
and
I think part of that is the fact that our video was in English. So we didn't really tailor the video in itself to be more, more palatable or to reach the audience in Congo. We should have had it in French or Lingala if it was for that reason. But we recognized that from an investment standpoint, we were going to do the best if we had it in English and sort of targeted the U.S. and other English-speaking areas around the world.
Well, and I don't know this for a fact, but are international investors prohibited from investing through this vehicle at the moment, or is it open?
No, in fact, we had investment from people from many countries. So it is open to people. A lot of that was through Facebook, actually. I think I have to do the math again, but I think we had more than 10 or 20 countries, people from those countries who participated. Obviously, the bulk of it was from the US, but we had interesting investments from say Southeast Asia or India or the Middle East or multiple countries in Europe. I think a few cases are actually people from Congo invested, South America. So we had from all over the place, but the amount was mainly coming from the US.
Well, that's good. Yeah, that is where I had a chain link in my brain missing, because I was didn't know if the regulations, since this was a newly accepted tool, were limited. But as we kind of wrap up here, you guys are gonna be doing another campaign. What do you feel like are the kind of things that you're focusing on? You mentioned a little bit about the successful campaigns that you watched, but what are the things that you're doing to prepare for this next campaign?
I think one thing that came to light after we launched the campaign that we weren't fully aware of was the fact that there are companies out there, marketing organizations and companies and so forth, that specifically do this type of work on behalf of companies for equity crowdfunding campaigns. We entertained a few offers while we were in the thrust of doing the campaign last time. And I think that's something we'll look at again, because we spent some money developing the video and it had a big payoff for us, and there may be an opportunity for us to work with another company to sort of amplify what we did from our own sort of internal and natural, if you will, social media and newsletter and so forth, everything we were doing for public relations. So that might be an opportunity to sort of take that to another level, and we'll evaluate that. And from the standpoint of a new group of anchor investors, that'll be interesting to take a look at what we might be able to do from that standpoint as well.
And I will just add one point. So timing is the key. Based on the successful campaigns that we've tracked, and based on the conversations we had with, again, with people at WeFunder, the recommendation is to have the campaign right after some sort of success. So you have a success and right immediate, so you have to be prepared, similar to the story of the Shark Tank. So, and then you share the news, and then you're forecasting for the next few months or 2 months or whatever length of the campaign you're anticipating, to continue that type of trend, or the pattern should be always like forward. And that basically by itself is going to motivate people to participate in your campaign. And that is a good strategy that we learned from other people in the past. And I think this time we are actually waiting for this good time to launch our campaign.
Great. Well, we really wish you the best of luck with that. And, congratulations on a first successful campaign. Heather, any other questions from your end?
I guess one question I kind of have is, you had mentioned that this is still kind of going through legislation. Are there any, is there ways that we as a community can call our people, call our representatives, or do we think that if this doesn't pass, could there be implications for the companies and people that are investing that may become a deterrent to as to why someone might want to go this route?
That's a great question. Actually, no one knows the answer to this question because these campaigns are not that old. And obviously, if that bill passes through, it's going to help companies who have raised money through this process to have a more clean cap table. But outside of that, the rest of, so there were some other changes that was part of that deal that now is already in practice. So I think as of March 15th, the SEC increased the limit that people can raise through crowdfunding. So it was about $1 million. Now it's about 5 million, exactly $5 million. So they already passed some parts of the conversations that has been in discussions for a while. Hopefully the last piece of it, as far as I'm aware of it, this special vehicle purpose for fundraising, for crowdfunding is going to be passed. So that is going to help a lot of companies. But to be honest, I'm not sure at what level that is. I haven't followed that. So hopefully it's going to pass through. Every time I talk with people at WeFunder, they are hopeful and they're saying that, oh, we hope that this is going to pass sometime soon. So I think we are hopeful too.
We'll be hopeful with you.
Thank you. I would add that I don't think the cap table issues are a showstopper. So if people are looking at this as an opportunity to raise capital, I say go for it. You know, even if it is potentially a failed campaign, you know, you'll learn from it. You'll probably still get something, right? You know, and I know even if it goes poorly and you know, it raises far less than what's anticipated, you know, I don't think it's something that'll kill a company. You know, I think there's very little downside to trying an equity crowdfunding campaign. So feel free to have anybody in the Doyen network reach out to us if they have any specific questions. We'd be happy to have a conversation and talk through some of the details. But yeah, we're fans of it. We're obviously trying to do it again too. So wish us luck and yeah, share the message when we're ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the offer to let people reach out. We will encourage that for anybody that's looking. So just thank you both really for the time and for the conversation. I mean, I think this is, you know, like we've been mentioning, a hot topic, but also kind of this ever-changing landscape. And so one, thank you for being guinea pigs, somewhat of a guinea pig through this process. And thank you for being good students of the process so you can share it, your learnings with us. So just really appreciate the time and you know, the sharing.
It was a pleasure.
Great. Well, best of luck with everything and we'll talk with you soon.
All right.
Thanks again.
Have a great day.